Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me today. I have a special guest in Kelly Malcolm. He's the VP of Exploration at Amex Exploration. For those that have been long-term watchers of the show and readers of my report, will know that Amex is a company I started following very early in their high-grade gold discovery in Quebec. Back then, they had about a 50-cent share price. Now they've been well north of that. And I think they're still very early in their potential for where they'll grow to. Lately, I've been noticing that gold stocks and gold itself have been weak. And I think that that's an overdone situation. And I think we're at a very crucial time when we're going to see a significant breakout. And in that kind of a breakout for gold and gold stocks, I expect a company like Amex Exploration to join the party. So let's welcome Kelly Malcolm. Kelly, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks a lot, Alan. Always a pleasure to be on with you.
Well, and it's always a pleasure to have you guys. You're my new sponsor of my website and helping me to be able to put a lot of this new content out that I want to get out to the public, because I think, as I said earlier, we're in a very exciting time. I get excited when everybody else is less than excited, but you guys really have a lot to talk about. So let's get right into it, Kelly. Before we talk about your gold stuff, you guys made a sort of out of left field discovery of a VMS deposit or discovery, and you're in close proximity to where there's an important mine, not about 8,000 meters away. These VMS deposits are very exciting because they can come in clusters. Let's talk about your new discovery that you just announced a couple of days ago, Kelly.
Sure. So we put out one single drill hole in terms of assay results focused on VMS exploration. The results from that intercept were about 8 meters of around 3% copper equivalent. The actual copper grade throughout that whole interval was about 2.4%, but there was also a significant zinc, silver, and gold associated credit with that mineralization. What's exciting about that?
That's not a copper equivalent number. That's the copper.
That's a straight up copper number. Yes, we didn't, in this release, we didn't put out any equivalency numbers. We wanted to let the numbers speak for themselves, but certainly it was a copper driven intercept. So a copper equivalent would be the way that you would look at this system because it is very, very rich, especially in certain samples with copper mineralization. And then in addition to that one drill hole, we put out a second hole visually that was 70 meters below that, what we consider a very nice intercept, that also shared very, very similar visual characteristics. And we expect will have very similar grades over essentially the same width. So what we think that we've defined is the start of a proper VMS system. The reason being, and I know we've talked about this before, is the historic work in the area had significant indications of something sizable there, basically on the fringes of where we've hit. So we hit the core of the system. Historically, there was 5 or 6 holes on the fringes of this, all with significant mineralization, albeit spotty, scattered, disseminated. I believe the best other hole was 2.15% copper over about 1.5 meters. So that's a substantial intercept on its own, but it's obviously not enough to get people too excited. But we did a lot of reinterpretation work, looked at old geochemical data, geophysical data, looked at neighboring projects and properties, and really got a good feel for the potential of this system in particular. And we hit what we think is the glory hole to start off what could end up being quite a significant copper deposit.
Now, Kelly, we always want to look at analogies and what's around. When I read your news release, the thing that struck me was a couple things. One was the you're in a package or a contact of two packages of rock there that are connected to the mine in the area. Let's talk a little bit about that contact and the nearby mine.
Sure. So I'll jump to the nearby mine first. It's called the Normatal Mine, where our project is based in the town. Sorry, it's not called the town of Normatal Mine. It's called the Normatal Mine. It went from surface down to a depth of better than 2.4 kilometers, was mined for over 50 years. The town that we're operating in is called the town of Normatal, named after that mine. Essentially, it built up a community. It was such a substantial moneymaker. To the west of that mine is a satellite deposit called Normet Mar. That's been worked on over the years and is showing significant promise as well. And those both sit in what we call the Normatal mine horizon. And how VMS deposits work typically is you get a layered sequence of volcanics, and in a period of acquiescence or a quiet period of volcanism, you get the formation of these VMS deposits, which form from hydrothermal fluids that are cutting through that rock package, and they basically sprinkle out onto the surface of that volcanic floor and find themselves trapped into beds or gullies in the historic ocean floor often, or sometimes on the land surface, but that's quite rare. And then usually you get more rocks overlaying that as you do throughout the geologic time period. But that mine horizon that you can see on our map, it's marked out in blue, that is the marker for the VMS mineralization period in the area. So essentially from that Normatal mine, trending across all the way through about 3/4 of our project, and then further off to the east, is all very prospective for these Normatal mine type targets. And Normatal was quite a rich project, very nice copper grades, about 0.5 gram of gold, quite nice zinc mineralization as well, about 1.5 ounces of silver. So that is very profitable rock, upwards of several $100 Canadian per ton. So it's quite an attractive target for us to go after. So it's relatively easy exploration, provided you have the geophysical and geochemical tools to guide you in that horizon, and you can basically test it along that sequence. And chances are pretty good, as you're probably well aware, that VMS deposits form in clusters, and oftentimes there are several rather than just being one isolated VMS deposit in a belt.
And so far in that belt, there's only been two. Am I getting that right?
There's been the past producing mine. The satellite to that was mined just at surface. There was a bulk sample taken, which was very rich in zinc. And really that was it. There was some sniffs further to the east, but nothing of substance has been yet found. But our discovery shows that whole package is actually quite prospective now, because I do think that we have the potential to be onto something substantial and build up real tonnage with real economic grades in this interval.
So Kelly, a couple things I'd like to ask about that Normatel mine. Just to, we always want to look at grade and size. What was the size in tonnage that they mined out of there approximately?
A little over 10 million tons. And what was neat about it is it's basically a pipe. So it was very, very continuous, similar to actually our high grade zone. This area has not seen much post mineralization deformation. And as you've always said, that's a really important thing when you're looking at these deposits, because they're simple to plan a mine around. Typically they're sheet-like. You can predict how you're going to be extracting. There's not very much folding, not much post mineralization faulting. So that was a really simple mine to work, and it was done from the 30s, I think, until around the late 70s, and then shut down permanently in the 1990s. It was fully reclaimed. It actually looks like a beautiful field now. All the infrastructure's gone, and it's fully revegetated.
And another thing is that are well known in these VMS deposits is the zonation of grade. You often will get zinc, silver, followed by gold and copper. You're already in the gold and copper. What was the situation at Normatel? Did they see that zonation of grade, or was the top part gone?
So no, there was definitely a higher zinc component near surface there. Zinc, lead, and a little bit of lead and silver. And then as they transitioned, I believe it was about 750 meters vertically or kilometer, it really started kicking up in terms of copper grades. And the neighboring company to us, Star Peak Exploration, they've been drilling that satellite deposit called Normet Mar. And they've been seeing quite similar things. They're hitting very nice zinc grades near surface with indications of copper increasing at depth. So it's a reasonable assumption to make that may happen to us, and we may sort of decrease in our zinc concentrations and increase in the copper as we get deeper in the system.
And often you'll see that as you go deeper into the system that you get richer grades. Is that generally what you think?
It can happen for sure. In the Abitibi, that's sort of the convention that people employ. We're 2 holes into this so far, so I think it's a bit of a stretch to say that, but we do see up near surface, like I mentioned, 2+% copper only over 1.5 meters. So potentially it is getting a bit wider at depth, but it's far too early to that's a bit too arm wavy even for me.
Yeah, as an analyst, I'm always looking to pull stuff out of you guys, Kelly, and it's just because of enthusiasm. I don't want to get you guys in any trouble. But finally, from a geological perspective, I noticed that where you hit that grade was sort of where you move from a wide package of rock into a bit of a bend there. Is that something that from a structural perspective that you would think is why the rocks are well prepared there?
Yeah, there could be. Let me see if I can pull that one up for you, Alan. I don't know if that is that okay if I share my screen here?
Yeah, let's see if it works. You never know with these Zoom calls. Yeah, it's
This will work nicely.
yeah, you got her.
You just have to enable screen sharing, Alan.
Okay, and multiple participants can share simultaneously. I figured that out. There you go, Kelly.
Beautiful.
There we go.
So this is nice actually. This is the mine sequence we were talking about earlier in blue. So basically Normatel mine here, Normet Mar satellite to the northwest. Here's our new discovery. All of these occur within this blue Normatel mine sequence. It actually trends even further over through here. That's just a number of faults that are masking that blue sequence below. So we've got several kilometers of it to test along our property. And then what you were speaking about is this image here.
Yes, that's the one.
Where exactly where we hit, you can see this jog in the mine sequence.
Right.
2 reasons for that. Number one is very limited drilling. So this is 250 meters. So we're several hundred meters between drill holes targeting this sequence. So you can easily fit, number one, you can easily fit a number of these lenses in that distance. But number two, we just have limited data to define this boundary. However, there is a really good case to make, like you said, that there is some structural complexity happening there. It also could be an ancient topographic thing. So VMS deposits, like I mentioned, form by percolation of metals as they're shot up basically into an ocean sequence, and they deposit and they look for basins and they look for areas with which are topographic lows at the time that you can grab that mineralization and trap it. So that could be an indication of a basin type environment, or it could be a structure that is mineralized as well. So it's tough to say what that is at this moment, but as we continue advancing, we'll get a much better handle on the structural sequence there for sure.
One thing I often notice, Kelly, is that we look at these geological maps and sometimes the topographic maps don't get maybe as much play as they should, because oftentimes that's an expression of what's happening deeper.
Mhm.
What does the topographic map look like here? Do you see indications of what we're talking about with these geological maps?
It would be one single topography basically for the whole project. It's very, very flat. There's a little bit of as we come up from the town of Normantal, we trend upwards, but it's only about 15 meters elevation difference. Otherwise, it's a very, very gradational um,
Flat area.
flat area. The one thing that we do see though is our major gold zones, which would be the high grade zone, Gretien, Grey Cat, are all basically defined at surface by swamps. So the elevation is actually the same because it's such an ancient environment. There's been overburden and placed over everything, but there definitely was an indication of alteration in that area because typically when you have hydrothermal alteration of rocks, they become a bit softer and they would be scraped away more by the glaciation than
Ah,
than the silicious rock. So that's one of the Abitibi tricks is you look in the swampy areas, which are harder to find, but oftentimes indications of a system at depth.
well, Kelly, I think we've covered a good amount of the new VMS discovery. You got more holes pending. It looks like you have regional targets there that could be similar. So I think you guys are off to the races there. And I'm a big fan of copper because not only am I bullish on precious metals, I'm also very bullish on battery metals and the electrification of the world and automobiles and all kinds of things. And copper is the most important in that. And you guys got some copper to go with your precious metals. So you're falling into the category that I really like.
Yeah, so that's really what we also want to portray is that MX is a gold exploration company, as you well know, but this was a very welcomed surprise. We think it's beneficial for shareholders. We're going to keep a drill working on this zone and work to define it. And one thing that I'd mentioned before we get off the topic is they're much easier to define in terms of a deposit than a gold system. You need much lesser spacings to define the continuity of the system, define the grade, but also they're much denser. So it's about double the density versus a quartz veined rock. So in the same amount of volume of rock, so let's say this is your square of gold mineralization, you're going to get a ton of mineralization. You need only half of that for a VMS system to get the equivalent amount of tonnage. So it pending obviously continued success, it won't take much to outline a significant deposit of mineralization on
And
this new system.
these VMS systems can be picked up good with geophysics. So
Absolutely.
that's been helpful.
Yes, totally. That's been a major tool for our success here and will be going forward as well.
Awesome. Well, let's talk about the big thing that you guys have, which is a series of high grade discoveries. You've got a few that are in close proximity to each other. We'll talk about your regional stuff at the end, but on the stuff that's sort of close in proximity that look like they could be connected. You've also got incredible, and I don't use that word lightly, high grade continuity. And when it comes to mining high grade gold systems, that's what you want to look for is continuity. And of the companies that I follow closely, you guys have some of the best high grade continuity that I've seen. You've got it from surface all the way down to over a kilometer. Let's get on to the gold story.
Sure. So we are rapidly working to drill off our major deposits. Most of our work at the moment is focused on the Eastern Gold Zone, comprised of the high grade zone, which is, like you mentioned, a very continuous panel of I would say very high grade gold mineralization. And then we've got Denise to the south of that, which is a bulk zone of low grade gold mineralization that starts right at surface. So most of our focus in terms of definition and expansion is focused on those two zones. We are doing a little bit of work to infill the Gratienne and Grey Cat zones. But the main objective here is to put a resource out at the beginning of 2022. That's what we're working towards. Can't obviously guarantee that it's happening, but we're certainly working towards that goal. And it looks like the end is progressing. We've got a number of groups helping us with this as well. And we're quite confident that we'll hit that timeline of early 2022 or first half at least of next year.
One of the things that I noticed really early, Kelly, when you were drilling was the potential to connect the dots as you go deeper. But I think there's also something important is connecting the dots along strike in between these zones. Can you give us a little color on that, Kelly?
Absolutely. So the connection of the two systems at depth doesn't seem to want to happen. I always thought that they may come together as the Denise and the high grade zone. It looks like they're truly in parallel. They strike at a different angle. So if you can see my hands here, they're a little bit off strike. So they come very close towards the west, and they branch out a little bit from each other, going towards the east, Denise and the high grade zone, because the high grade zone is on a secondary structure. So the major fault is here. High grade zone trends up a little bit away from that main fault, whereas Denise trends along that main structure. So they spread apart a little bit as you go towards the east, where the high grade zone goes to depth, which is why it doesn't look like they're going to connect, but we do think they're very synergistic, and both are a big value add being that close to one another. Because essentially,
in the sense that there's not a lot of room between the two, is that correct?
Correct. And essentially you would and you will share infrastructure. If you build an open pit on Denise, you'll be exploiting the high grade zone. If you decide to do some bulk mining on Denise, you'll be using the high grade zone infrastructure, which is clearly developing to be an underground type system. So that's what I mean by synergies. They're only 50 meters apart from one another. So that's substantial, and we think it adds real economic value.
So you could go underground from the Denise zone to catch.
That's again an alternative as to how to look at it. You can go back either way. So we've got a number of consulting firms, namely geological, working towards that resource, but a few of those groups are starting to do some very, very preliminary evaluation of engineering potential and how you could build a mine here and what that would look like. So don't have much answers for you at the moment, but we are working towards getting a proper, instead of an arm waving handle on what that would look like and what this mine could look like in the near future.
Well, Kelly, I know that open pit, lower grade mines can be very profitable. Most of the big production of gold comes from that. But I'm also a big fan of high grade, especially with great continuity, because that's what makes some very high margin deposits as well, and maybe not as much initial capital to get them rolling. So let's talk more about your high grade zone with this excellent continuity from surface down to over 1,000 meters. What are you doing on that now, and what's pending as far as you guys are stacking up a lot of potential assay results here?
Absolutely. So we're really working. So the upper portion of the high grade zone, sort of 0 to or maybe 50 meters to 500 meters, is pretty well defined now. We've got we're still working on tightening up on some of the areas with bonanza mineralization in order to minimize the effect of the capping of that mineralization, which is basically geostatistics that take away some of your gold that you've drilled. So we want to minimize that.
Not a big fan of that, by the way, Kelly, because
no, neither am I, of course.
You mine that stuff, and often it proves to be very conservative.
Yeah, and what we've proven or are working to prove is that this truly is a rich system. You can drill a hole 2 meters away from another bonanza hit, and you'll have very, very comparable grades. So that's one of the reasons that we're doing some tight drilling up near surface. At depth, we still have some gaps to fill in on that long section. So we've got to basically pin cushion all of the holes in between some of those hits to get us up into a reasonable category of resource when we put that out. As well, we're working to expand both along strike and a little bit more at depth. We've drilled down to over 1.25 kilometers. We won't be doing our resource that deep, so there's limited reason to go much deeper at the moment. But we may, because we're big believers that we're able to hit at depth, and we've proven that we can, may stick one or two a little bit deeper, just to indicate that this indeed is a very continuous system that is, I don't really see a reason for it to cut off anywhere, is what how we interpret this.
You're teasing me there with a couple things that I think weren't lost on people. One is that, you know, in these gold systems, it's kind of like what I spent my career, a lot of my career on, which was diamond exploration. And when you get high grade diamonds, it's not easy to say what you said earlier about drilling 2 meters away and you hit the same kind of stuff. That's important to me in a high grade system. That keeps going back to my continuity comments. And I hope it's not lost on people. The second thing you said, which was about the extent of these kind of systems. In the Red Lake area, you know, they went down, I think, about 2 kilometers before they really hit the jewelry boxes. And you guys are already in the jewelry boxes, and it looks like there's a potential that there's more jewelry boxes down there. So I know it's a bit of arm waving because you don't have any holes down there, but from what we know about these kind of systems, it's reasonable to believe that, you know, you could have some juicy stuff at depth as well.
Yeah, totally. And one of the reasons that we've always thought that this would extend to at least where we found it so far is the neighboring historic mine that we talked about. And it was continuous from surface to 2.4 kilometers. And I don't know really why they abandoned it. It was still mineralized at depth. I think that there was some flooding that happened and just became too expensive of an endeavor. The argument is that would continue even deeper. We're of the opinion that our high grade zone will go significantly deeper than what we've outlined so far.
Okay, Kelly, and the last thing I wanted to talk about regarding the high grade zone is a topic I keep on banging the table on with you guys, is the high grade continuity. There's a paper being written about that specific topic and how unique it is to have such continuity. Can you put some light on that paper that's being worked on, Kelly?
Yeah, sure. So we've written a paper in conjunction with the professor out of the Quebec University called University de Chicoutimi, along with two of our geologists, myself and the chairman, Jacques Trottier. And essentially, we were trying to answer the question, like you said, why and how is this such a continuous shoot? Whereas most of the Abitibi, you get much spottier, but you can get rich, but very spotty gold deposits. And it's a unique system because we don't really have much alteration surrounding the high grade mineralization. So it's almost like it just opened once and this gold was placed into the system. So we look to address that. So but it is the evidence and the science that we've done points to the fact that this is a unique system with unique characteristics, and that helps guide some of the ideas as to why this is such a continuous and high grade gold system. It's got some unique characteristics. So that's pending revision and pending publication, but once it's out, I'm happy to share a copy with you, and we'll probably post it to our website.
We'll definitely be talking about that because that puts more meat on the bone as to, you know, what we've been seeing in the drill holes and and all this high grade continuity. So Kelly, before I let you go, I wanted to talk a little bit about your regional gold exploration because, that's kind of indicative of this overall area that, it looks like this isn't just one or two events. You're finding high grade gold in other spots as well. So talk a little bit about the work you're doing on the regional targets and what you found and where you're going with that.
Sure. So we've done quite an extensive regional program. I've been very pleased with it. We're starting to get assays coming in. So we do look to have something out in the next month or two once all that information is in and compiled, because it was a very much property-wide program that we did. We tested a lot of our Beaupre block. We had a number of really unique structural targets that mirrored. Remember, I was talking about the main fault and the secondary fault with the high grade zone trending off of it. A number of similar structures to that we targeted. We also did, like I mentioned, obviously with the VMS drill hole, we did a small amount of VMS focused drilling. We did some geophysical testing, and we found some really interesting stuff. So yeah, we're starting to get numbers coming back. We're looking forward to receiving everything, but we do plan to do a regional release focused on exploration once we get those numbers back in. But
yeah, Kelly, you're a bit of a scientist that you don't really get excited like I do in arm way, but you've made discoveries of high grade
yeah,
gold.
we've put out two really fantastic discoveries in terms of grade. The 210 zone was 56 grams over 8.5 meters, I believe.
Which would make, by the way, which would make a junior exploration company.
Oh, it'd go dancing. Yes, we'd be dancing in the streets. We were. Yeah. And then what we call the Alizé zone, or hole 41, again, a very high grade intercept. So there is high grade gold elsewhere from where we've been focused. So really looking forward to getting all that back and sharing that information with everyone.
So Kelly, I guess if we had to put it in an order, one would be, of course, your continuous drilling to continuity for resource work along strike, and then at depth to connect the dots. Would 2 and 2A be the regional gold exploration and the regional VMS? Did the VMS jump up? I mean, how do you categorize that?
It's tough. So we're basically allocating work to both at the moment. We'll see what all the numbers come back from the gold, and that will and also from our follow-up drilling on the VMS, and that will dictate where our focus goes. But it's a good problem to have in that you've got great discoveries, and you're not sure what ones to follow up on. So I think that that's a problem that we'll continue to have as we keep working this project. It's certainly got a lot of metal endowment, and it's been really underexplored over the years. It's really just been focused on that strip that we've been focusing on too. So I think as we start allocating capital, getting a better scientific understanding of the project, that more discoveries will be made across the entirety of it.
Well, I hope that the regional gold exploration and the VMS keep on a tight horse race down the stretch to which becomes number 2 on your priority list. You've got a heck of a number 1, and now you've got a heck of a number 2 and 2A, and we don't know which one's leading the race yet.
No, and we'll find out in the coming months for sure once we get it all back.
Kelly, I know you're a busy guy these days, and I really appreciate your time. I appreciate you guys sponsoring my website so that I can do a lot more reporting. I want to thank you very much for joining us, and I'm going to do a little wrap up here and before we end the show. But again, thanks a lot for your support, for coming on the shows to help explain to my audience what you're doing. and to helping me do the reporting that I do.
Well, thanks so much, Alan. Thanks for your support as always for the last, I guess, 2.5 years now. You've been speaking with us and following us. So very much appreciated. Thanks for having me on, and let's do it again soon.
Yeah, we will for sure. I know you guys are going to have lots of news. So let me wrap it up, Kelly. There you go, folks. I mean, I hope it's not a mystery as to why I like this company so much and why I invited them to be a sponsor of my show, whether it's sponsors of my show or companies that I pick. It all comes down to what the truth machine is telling us with the drilling. I recognized very early that they had the makings of something special at their high grade zone. They've continued to prove that. I think the company is undervalued just based on that alone. I look at companies with similar characteristics. In fact, I would argue that Amex has the continuity story that these other companies don't have to the same degree. I'm looking forward to that paper that Kelly was talking about because that will shine more light on the unique characteristics of this exceptional high grade continuity. So I see companies with, multiple valuations of where Amex is right now. So I think they're tremendously undervalued based on the high grade gold discovery. But now they're adding sweeteners that are potential, if you were a junior and you found only the VMS or only the regional discoveries that they've made, you'd be dancing in the street, as Kelly said. So, I think that if you put it all into context of what they found, potentially what they're going to find, the resource that they're working on, the unique high grade, that this is a company that every investor that's interested in gold and now copper as well should be looking at. I think it's been about a 5x since I first started covering the company. And I think that they've got a lot of growth ahead of them. So take a look at their website. They've got a lot of great information on there. Kelly and his team are very good at explaining what they're doing. I think you should look much closer at all the data that they have on their website. And I think you'll quickly realize why I'm such a bull on Amex exploration. And as I said earlier, I think we're in a good time for gold to start performing. This time last year, gold was trading at around $1,700 an ounce. It then went on a run to almost $2,100 an ounce. I think even at $2,100 an ounce, with all the debt that's out there and the inability of the interest rates to go up, that this is a good space for investors, that they'll be treated well, especially if they can buy with good timing. And I think we're at that critical juncture where we're going to see gold run, and the gold stocks and copper's already doing very well, really perform like rock stars. And I think Amex is a rock star. So check them out, do your homework, and we're going to keep following closely all the developments at Amex. So have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, everyone.